Hey, so we're in this series, which is crazy. We're just like, hey, we're in the middle of a series, and so, okay, let me pause here for a second. I'm having a baby tomorrow morning at 7:30, and so I'm a little on edge right now. Okay, like I'm looking over and being like, that thing better stay in there for like I need to just give me 35 minutes, and then we're good to do whatever you want. So man, we're excited. Be praying for us. We're going in 5:30 tomorrow morning, coming out with a baby. So nothing life-changing about that, right? So I'm going, man, and Jared's out of town, so like I'm on the edge last night. I'm like, stay in there. And so we're good. I'm back. We're in this series. We just started it last week, and we're calling it 5 Habits for Questionable Living. We feel like this fits beautifully in the sort of the timeline and the life of our church, because these things are this didn't just come out of, hey, this just sounds like something fun, read a good book, just sounds like a party. No, this came out of really sort of going, hey, what's relevant to the people that would call City Life home in so many ways? And just kind of looking at the majority of our crowd and going, man, how can we feed with God's Word the family that we have here at City Life? And so we looked at this and we said 5 habits for questionable living. This isn't 5 habits that you don't want to teach your kids and that we're gonna talk about doing them at church. No, we want to be questionable in the way that we live as followers of Jesus. And so, just a quick disclaimer: we said this early on. Like, man, this is sort of a housekeeping series in some ways. We acknowledge that through a lot of this, we're communicating with people who would say, hey, we know and love Jesus. We love the church. We're a part of it. And so if you would go, man, I'm just kind of exploring things. I don't even know if I like Jesus. As a matter of fact, and then we're not on great terms right now. I would also circle back and say, hey, you're in a great place. You're in a sweet spot. No accident. For the seasons that we walk through in our lives. And my prayer is just that you find home and a welcoming spirit here as we walk through these things. Last week, Jared teed it off, did such an incredible job sort of just painting the picture for what we mean by questionable living, and then jumping into the first habit that we were talking about in this series, which was bless. And we said, hey, the challenge this week is to go out then and intentionally bless a handful of people that aren't inside of maybe your everyday circle. So like we said, like, hey, that's great that you bless your spouse, but maybe step outside of that. So it's great that you have this circle of friends and you want to be generous in that circle of friends. That's fantastic. We're saying, hey, step outside of that. And sort of a framework, we just said, who are some people who might be close to you but far from God, or maybe even close to God but far from you, or far from both? And how would we do something that loved and served them in just a practical way? And we said that we're not calling that evangelism, right? That's like where I start getting the chills and I'll start sweating. That baby will come out real quick if we start calling it that. No, we just said, no, just simply because we're children of God, Jesus is King, that we would model what that looks like in our lives by blessing people. So that message is, or should be soon online. You can go back if you're going, hey, I missed it. I'm going to jump in because from the beginning, you're only a week behind. This morning, we're going to jump into this second habit, which I'm very excited about, and I practiced a lot, well, just throughout my life, unfortunately, but the habit of eating. And so you might go, well, man, where does this fit? Like, seriously, did we go to some seminar, or is this a church? And so we're going to talk about this habit of eating and where it fits in this idea of questionable living. So if you're like me and you like food, then hey, this is going to be amazing. If you don't like food, well, that's just a whole nother, like, we got counselors and stuff, and we can just go ahead and some rare steak, and we'll just kind of fix that right on up. So, but hey, I like it when we get into some of these. They tend to be lighter in some ways, and and just super practical. So let me do this. I want to just ask this question to sort of tee it off and kind of get our taste buds going a little bit. How many of you, let's just by show of hands, and really it's going to, if you don't raise your hand, I'm just going to tell you what's going to happen. You're all going to raise your hand. How many of you have a favorite food? Like you just got that favorite, this is my favorite food. Okay, good. And now don't think just like food. Just this is for me, just because I want to savor a little bit. What would you say your favorite meal is? I'm not saying like, don't give me like burgers. I like burgers too. But like for me, my favorite burger, man, it's going to have some bacon on it, egg sunny side up. I just like a sloppy egg just oozing out of that thing. You squish the bun, it squirts somebody right over the, like, what's your favorite? Let's share some with me. Just share. I'm hungry. So, for real, what are some of your favorite meals?
Country style steak, mashed potatoes.
Yeah. Oh my goodness, country style steak. You know what I'm talking about. You know what's up. What else?
Brisket at Lewis Barbecue.
Brisket at Lewis Barbecue. They got the extra fatty brisket or the lean brisket? Which one? Fatty. Yeah. We should all just load up and go to. There'll be a bus out front. We're going to Lewis after. I'm joking. Unless you can make that happen in the next little bit. What else?
Fajitas with queso dip.
Fajitas with queso dip.
Yep.
Oh my gosh. Angelica. I like, you know, it's even better. You swirl around and put some chorizo in there.
Yeah.
Mix that up, right? Oh. What else?
Thanksgiving.
Thanksgiving. But see, the reason you get away with that is because our minds automatically go with the spread, you know? Like we know in our hearts what you mean when you say that. I might end on that. Let's do one more. This is so good. Yes, ma'am.
Chicken marsala over linguine.
I love chicken marsala. I got a mushroom sauce kind of deal going on. Oh my goodness. There's a part of me that's like my reaction to those things is genuine. That's just my personality. Don't get me wrong. But there's times where I just ask my wife. I have deep affection for food. There's we'll be sitting at the table and I'm eating something fantastic, and it's not uncommon for me to just be like, and she'll start talking, and it'll be like, And there's literally some times where I just get so excited about the flavors that are swirling around in my mouth that I can't even think, I can't listen, I can't make eye contact. I know it's awkward, but I'm just in, right? Food is an incredible thing. Not everybody agrees with that. For some people, food's just function, it just serves its purpose. At the end of the day, get on with it. I don't need it to be all of these things. But if that's you, I'm going to just save you the time. Don't invite me over. Okay? We're good. That just saved us a few spots in the calendar. But think about this. God made us so that our bodies would require fuel to function, and He provided food to be that fuel. So one of the several things that we could say eating is about is that eating is about sustenance, right? So I'm going to put these up here just to get the conversation going. If you're writing things down, write these down. If you're not writing these down, what do you do? Thank you. But then He also gave us the ability to taste food, right? We're drawn to eat more of the foods that taste good and satisfy us. I know I certainly am. You put a bowl of circus peanuts in front of me, right? You know what I'm talking about? The only candy that can survive nuclear warfare. You put those in. We've had this conversation, and I was grateful because some of you then brought me bags of circus peanuts, and so that went well, but they're gone. So I thought I'd bring it up again, just see what happens, right? And so then I think it's safe to say that we could also say eating is about pleasure. I don't think there's any accident that the Creator of the universe gave us taste. So we know that our body requires food to continue, right? But in that process of refueling, if we look at it that way, is there any accident that in that process He also gave us taste buds so that in a meal I might experience pleasure and joy. All right? We don't even need to tiptoe into the conversation about God's love and provision for us, do we? And then some of us would say, man, there's a little bit of an acknowledgement of the reminder of God's love and provision for me when I eat. And so for those who feel that and kind of eat and go, man, just God is good. Like I have this, and our mind may go to different places or whatever it goes to. Just like I'm just grateful, or other people might go, well, some people around the world don't get to eat like this. So regardless of where you go, we could say that eating is also about a sense of gratitude, right? And so we pause and we say, Lord, thank you for this food, right? And so that can too quickly become sort of a ritual, routine, or tradition, but not forget that it actually is a reminder of the love and provision and generosity of God for us, that while He fuels us, we would have great joy, and that joy would turn into worship. How cool is that, right? And then by itself, though, the act of eating is not a habit for questionable living. Like it's expected, it's required. There's nothing surprising or questionable about it. But what makes eating a questionable habit is when it comes to who you are eating with and why you are eating with them. And so we can also see eating as a form of mission. Eating as mission. First three would kind of be expected. We probably could have come there without a lot of work, right? But when was the last time that we saw sitting down to the table as an opportunity to love and serve people who might possibly be far from God? When was the last time we saw eating as an opportunity for mission? The sort of the foundation for this whole series is mission. And here's, I want to give you this. It's not on the screen, but if you want more, I can email it to you or whatever. But my definition of mission is an intentional interaction with someone where they might see and experience the love of Jesus as they encounter the everyday rhythms of our lives. Let me get that one more time. An intentional interaction with someone where they might see and experience the love of Jesus as they encounter the everyday rhythms of our lives. And so this takes us to what is quite possibly one of my most favorite pictures of Jesus in the Gospels. We're going to be in Matthew chapter 9. There should be a Bible around you somewhere. Maybe there's one under the seat in front of you, or if you're in the front row, there might be one under your seat. That's going to be page 814 if you're in that Bible. If you got your own Bible, hey, you're on your own. I'll give you a minute to get there. Quite possibly one of my favorite pictures of Jesus in the Gospels. If you've been around City Life for a lengthy amount of time, meaning before we even launched, right? So this is like last summer, I taught from this passage. And so I know that there's a good handful of people here who weren't here then. But some of you might go, man, this sounds familiar. I feel like it was probably in the last year that we went through this passage, and it was about a year ago. But man, when I think about the picture of the opportunity to love and serve people who are far from God at the table that has food on it, and what food creates in those moments, those opportunities, man, do we need to look any further? Do we need to create these pictures and these? No. Matthew chapter 9. I'll start in verse 9. And getting into a boat, he crossed over and came to his own city. That was that was verse 1. There was a big 9 next to it. Just go down a paragraph. Look, baby's coming. Baby's coming. Verse 9. As Jesus passed on from there, he saw a man called Matthew sitting at the tax booth, and he said to him, "Follow me." And he rose and followed him. Matthew rose. Matthew just dropped everything. He got up and he followed him. And so there's some significant setup that goes into this, okay? And so just kind of bear with me. I love getting into some of the context. I don't want to just drill the heart constantly if we don't know what's informing the heart, right? And so Jesus is in a town called Capernaum. It's on the Sea of Galilee in the northern part of Israel. The town of Capernaum was on a main road that the Romans would use for transport, trade, and to destroy as much of the world as they possibly could and make it theirs, right? And so then as people would pass through the town of Capernaum, so if you were leaving town to go somewhere, or if you were just passing through, the Roman government would collect their taxes as people would travel down the road. So as trade is in progress, they would just take it off of the road, not so much the sale. And so these tax booths were set up in strategic places around the region so that the government could get their money. So Matthew now is collecting taxes, okay, as a Jew. And he's collecting taxes for the Roman government. The most oppressive, ruthless government in the world. Imagine how well that goes for him when he goes to try to hang out with his buddies at night. So then as people are passing by, here's Matthew, a Jew, supposedly loyal. He was seen as a traitor, though. He was seen as an extortionist because that's how they made their money. And so they would say, this is what you owe, but what they wouldn't say is, all you really owe the government is this much, and I'm going to keep this much. And so whatever that second little extra was, man, they just made up on their own, pocketed the rest, gave to Caesar what he needed, and that's what we call extortion. So here's a man who's a liar, he's a thief, he's seen by some as a traitor, and he is a professional extortionist. And so this isn't even about eating yet, but just sort of get a picture of the audience that's about to appear at the table. Jesus says, "And come and follow me." Look who he said that to, right? Like, how awesome do we think we actually are because we're walking with Jesus and maybe someone else isn't? And Jesus gives us this little reminder like, oh, boys, you think you're awesome, huh? Hey, Matthew, the one that nobody likes, the one who's betrayed everyone, the one who lies and steals from everyone else. You're going to be one of the boys. Come on, let's go. And it says that when Jesus called him, he followed him. He got up, left everything, and just off they went, right? What a picture. What a picture. Let's go verse 10. And as Jesus reclined at table in the house, behold, many tax collectors and sinners came and were reclining with Jesus and his disciples. So the next picture that we see, I think that we see this in Luke. We see it in, I think it's Luke 5, and we also see it in Mark 2, sort of the parallel story that happens here. But in there, we kind of get the picture that the very next thing that happens is Matthew invites Jesus over to his house for a feast. Jesus is like, yo, invite all your buddies. We're going to have a celebration because now you're following me, right? So that makes sense. So like, let's go celebrate. Let's go feast. Like, rarely do we celebrate or fellowship without food, right? And amen. Like, if you're going to do that, remember, I don't need to be on the invite list, okay? Like, if we're going to show up, there's going to be some good food. Something's going to be hot. Something's going to be sweet. Like, it's going to be amazing, right? So Jesus says, let's go feast at your house. Invite your friends. But then who does it tell us is there? It says, sorry, I'm in the wrong section again. And behold, there he is. Many tax collectors and sinners came and were reclining with Jesus and his disciples. We'll look at a couple of things right there. They were reclining. It says Jesus reclined at the table with them. And so we can't just get this like, oh, he just kind of like that. I think, here's what I'm saying. I think it's easy to miss the meaning of that word. It's easy to just be like, okay, he's reclining. He was sitting at the table with everyone. No, there was something unique about it. There were environments where you went and you just sat at the table, right? It was going to be a little bit more of a serious environment, not as laid back. And it communicated that there was still some distance, like we still had some rapport to build with the other people who were at the table. And then there was reclining at the table, right? And reclining, you just hang in there. Baby's coming. There was reclining at the table, which was something a little bit more like this, all right? And then you would recline at the table, and you'd have pretty much someone else's kneecaps or feet in your face or near your plate, and then you would just kind of lean in and be like, what's up? And so like if John got out of line, Jesus would, yeah, so there was this posture of acceptance. You reclined at the table with your friends. It was a symbol of hospitality. You didn't just sit at the table. The story tells us that he reclined at the table. What a picture. And then it says, behold, many tax collectors and sinners came, and they joined them at the meal. The New Living Translation actually translates this as, and many tax collectors and the scum of the earth. Man, I just said that for fun. I think we got a little out of line with our English translations from time to time. But that one gives a little bit of a picture, doesn't it? What's trying to be communicated. Somebody said, when they looked at that Greek word, no, this is a severe crowd of people. Many tax collectors and sin. And then it said, with Jesus and his disciples were with him. Wasn't a solo mission. He wasn't out there on his own, left to just see what happened. No. And the disciples were with him. I love that picture. And then we get into verse 11. It says, and when the Pharisees saw this, they said to his disciples, why does your teacher eat with tax collectors and sinners? Everybody, hey, questionable living. Why comes the question? Why does your teacher eat with tax collectors and sinners? It would almost be expected that he wouldn't, but he did, and therefore it was called into question. Questionable living. It wasn't normal for a teacher, it wasn't normal for a rabbi, it wasn't normal for a spiritually influential leader. And then all of a sudden, this guy who comes on the scene is hanging out with these guys. I think we still miss this all these years later. Let's keep going. That's where I'm going to start. I'll start going off the rails here if we stay there. Verse 12 and 13. But when he heard it, he said, those who are well have no need of a physician, but those who are sick. Go and learn what this means. I desire mercy and not sacrifice, for I came not to call the righteous, but sinners. And so, Jesus' whole reason for coming, I came not to call the righteous, but sinners. His whole reason for coming wasn't so that the righteous could get more righteous. In other words, he didn't come so that the church folk could get more church, right? He came so that those far from him might experience him and love him. He purposely, he intentionally, he questionably positioned himself around people who were far from him, knowing that they were far from him. And because they were far from him, he knew he needed to be with them. And in this case, he did so around a meal. He did so around a meal. I love this line that comes out of that book that I'll talk about in the end, but the book that we're sort of walking through in some ways in this series by a guy named Michael Frost. But he uses this phrase in there. He says, conversion flowers in communion. That's not, we'll come to that in a second. He says, conversion flowers from communion. I think sometimes then some of us we're real zealous and we want people to know Jesus, and sometimes we go, I mean, let's just get to Jesus. And he's going, well, time out. That might work if you're calling, if you're sort of Ephesians 4 gifting. Look it up. I'm not going to spend time there. If your gifting is that of an evangelist, then hey, you're probably in great shape because that's how God has wired you and gifted you. But for some of us who would go, I'm just not wired as an evangelist, but as we said in our setup last week, hey, but this isn't about evangelism. This is about the everyday rhythms of our lives, that we would live lives in such a way that we would live habits, that the rhythmic pieces of how we go about the day would say, I love Jesus and He's pretty awesome. You might see something like that in Him too. And so then we can't miss then that the communion with others is a picture of the gospel, and that by time with others at our table or and time with others in blessing and loving and serving, that somewhere in the way that God would rescue their hearts and they would come to know Jesus. That's not on us. God's a far greater evangelist than you or I. But good stewardship of the love relationship in Jesus that He's given us is that we would daily fall to our knees and say, Jesus, make me more like you. And in 1 John 2:6, that's why we see whoever claims to live in Him must walk as Jesus did. What a picture. He tells a story in the book of a pastor in Portland, Oregon, mess of a town. I can say that. And he tells a story about a Baptist pastor there who he sat down with and just said, hey, let's talk about some of the missional rhythms in your life. And tell me about some of your neighbors. He said, man, all the guys on the street, man, it's a mess. Like, they're constantly over there. One of my neighbors, this is the Baptist pastor, right? He says, I'm not hating on Baptists. I'm just saying the book said he was Baptist. And so, okay, do what you want with that. He said, one of my neighbors prides himself in making the best margaritas on the block, right? He says, so I'm constantly getting invited over for margarita and poker night, and I'm just going, that just doesn't work. So how am I supposed to then connect with the guys on my street? Michael Frost goes, time out. Why aren't you going to margarita and poker night, right? Like, that sounds like a fantastic place to be. And we're not even talking about how you feel about margaritas or poker. He said, because if that's the place where the guys on your street are gathering together on a regular basis as sort of the rhythm of their life, they're gathering around the table and you've been invited to it. And so he challenged him, hey, go to margarita and poker night. And the guy was like, well, I just don't, man, what if the people, like there's another guy down my street, he doesn't go either, and he goes to my church. What if he sees me going to margarita and poker night? Like, then what happens? I might lose my job, my reputation, my everything. He goes, how many spiritual conversations have you had with these men on your street? Well, none. How many times have they even just come over to say hi to you and just shake hands and see what's up? Well, only to invite me to margarita and poker night. Well, have you had any spiritual conversations? Have you been able to share parts of your story with them when they just come at the moment of invitation? Well, not really. He says, you need to go to margarita and poker night. So, taking the challenge, he goes to margarita and poker night. And he drinks a Coke, just true to his convictions, right? Nobody questioned why he was drinking a Coke. And then he from that moment on would have regularly routine conversations with his neighbors then where they would question the Jesus that was showing himself through him. Conversion flowers in communion. Michael Frost says this will be on the screen. He says, the table is the great equalizer in relationships. When we eat together, we discover the inherent humanity of all people. We share stories and hopes and fears and disappointments. People open up to each other, and we can open up to them to share the same things, including our faith in Jesus. And so what I'm suggesting, what I believe that Jesus is suggesting, what I believe that we so often miss along the way is that the table and what's on it and what happens around it is quite possibly our greatest opportunity for mission that exists in the church today. And you know what the funny thing about that is? It's outside of the church itself. Because how many people at Margarita and Poker Night aren't going to just get up, walk down the street, and go to my man's church? All of them. But the influence that he would have in their garage is profound. And so here's what I want to do, just a few minutes left, just make some connections, an application, and tell you a couple stories. But why is it that we so quickly throw out anything that might point to this form of questionable living? Why is it that we so often miss these opportunities for mission in the everyday rhythms of our lives, like in something as simple as eating around the table, right? Something as routine as eating. Like we do that at least 21 times a week. For me, it's like 29 and a half, but, right? And what if we, and some of us, then we would probably wig out a little bit if I said, hey, I want to challenge us then to share 3 of those times with people far from God, might be close to you, might be far from both. And you go, well, that's a lot in my week. I'm going 21 times, plus snacks, plus late night dessert, and poker night. Margaritas if you're not Baptist, right? Let me approach that question with another question, and it's this. Is it possible, hear me, is it possible that we just aren't all that impressed with or moved by the work of Jesus in our own lives to see what might happen around the table as Jesus moving in someone else's life? Is it possible that the reason we miss opportunities for mission, the reason we hesitate to live questionably, isn't because we are introverts or we don't know how to make friends or we just can't stand all of deprived humanity? That might be the case for some of you, but again, we got people who can help you fix that. But is it possible that we're not so impressed with what Jesus might do in somebody else's life because we're just not all that moved by what he might do in ours? Because when we're moved by what Jesus does in our lives, we can't help but want him to move like that in the lives of others, right? If Jesus is making a profound impact in my life, if this love story of Jesus is shaping me, it's molding me, it's changing me, and we're seeing the things of old go away, they're being redeemed, they're not just being erased, but they're being rescued and redeemed, and now there's hope for something different, and there's joy that's coming out of that, and all of that leads me into a position of praise and worship, and that's good and it's beautiful, and now it's starting to make some noise with your life. Wouldn't we want that to be contagious and seen and felt and experienced, that others might know, live, and tell the love story of Jesus with you? R.C. Sproul says, if the lesson you get from Jesus hanging out with sinners is you should hang more with sinners, you're confused with who you are in the story. I saw another pastor post that this week. I'm going to read that one more time. Think about that. If the lesson you get from Jesus hanging with sinners is you should hang more with sinners, you're confused with who you are in the story. So now I'm just talking to the church folk. We're going to bend the ear a little bit here, right? It's too easy for us sometimes in our arrogance as church folk to go, this is us and that's them, right? Remember, this was Jesus, a model and an example, but we are not him. So if we see Jesus hanging out with sinners and we go, oh, we need to be like Jesus and go hang out with the scum of the earth, we fail to see who we are in the story. And we miss the reality that says, no, like it's not us versus them out there, us in here, them, the dirty, depraved, us, the saints. No, us now, sinners saved by grace, who might go, know, live, and tell the love story of Jesus to others who might one day come to know and love him. Lost just like we once were, not forgetting our position is not of arrogance, pride, and high stature as followers of Christ, but in humility, remembering what we're capable of, and that just like that, we could be back. Right? And so let me give us I got 2 questions for us. 2 questions, sort of application-related questions. The first one is this, not on the screen. Do you live in such a way that people in our community would come to know and love Jesus because of the way you eat? Do you live in such a way that people in our community would come to know and love Jesus because of the way we eat? It almost sounds like a silly question, right? But then Alan Hirsch, I love this guy. He says this, Australian guy, squirrely dude, really smart. Sharing meals together on a regular basis is one of the most sacred practices we can engage in as believers. Missional hospitality is a tremendous opportunity to extend the kingdom of God. We can literally eat our way into the kingdom of God. Oh man, then I'm in good shape. I'm in real good shape so far. So good. If every Christian household regularly invited a stranger or poor person into their home for a meal once a week, we would literally change the world by eating. I can think of a whole lot worse ways to change the world. What a beautiful picture. And then the second question I would ask us is, do we live in such a way that our lives are questioned? Do we live in such a way that our lives are questioned with regards to how we eat, why we eat, and more than anything, hear this, who we eat with? Who we eat with. Are we being questioned? Is it sketchy? Are the people with gritty stories coming to your table? And so I literally want to give us that challenge, that you would look at your week, not just this week, but as a new pattern, new rhythm of your life. Who are 3 people this week that you could share maybe 3 of the 29 meals that you're going to eat this week? Maybe it's just a cup of coffee. Maybe it's poker and margarita night. Look, just invite me. But who are 3 people outside of your regular circles, meaning outside of your family, and those are already like, man, me and my wife had a great meal. Well, I hope that happens on a regular basis. I hope that's a model for what could then come out of sort of the missional habits of your life. And like, well, no, me and my kids, well, that's great. Maybe there's some really neat things needed to happen there, and that's really cool too. But who are 3 people outside of the family circle, or even outside of like your regularly in and chill friend circle, then who are coming to the table? And hear me, you ready? This is not about evangelism, right? But it's everything about evangelism, right? We're not bringing people to the table so that we can just slap them hard with a good thing, right? No. We're bringing people to the table, or we're accepting the invitation to their table so that we might be loved and known, so that they might be known and loved, so that just through who God is making us to be, they might see something different, raise a question that points to the Savior. Because conversion might flower in communion. Caroline and I had some neighbors in Franklin. We moved into this townhouse. I mean, everything was close. I mean, like our front door nearly touched their front door. You know, those skinny little 3-story things. And we we were sitting out on our back porch. Caroline and I may or may not have had a pitcher of margaritas. And then they were sitting on their back porch, may or may not have had a pitcher of margaritas, and you could practically just high-five them across the back patio, right? Like literally. And at some point, we just were like, hey, you guys want to come over? You know, like, and I know it sounds crazy, right? And so we just said, hey, come on over. And so they came over and we sat on the porch, and this became a regular thing where we just got to know them. As we got to know them, it was really clear that they were far from God, but they started to love us, and we started to love them. And so we'd get invited to things like their birthday parties and different things, which are absolute ragers. I mean, like we'd be like, hey, it's time for the birthday party. We'd look out the windows, like hear this horn honking, and be like, oh, that's the booze bus. Like they'd order a booze bus that would come around. It's got like the LED lights. It was like real nice inside and everything. And just like there was like a bar in the bus. It was just absolutely insane. And be like, babe, you ready to go? So we'd go over to their house and be like, well, maybe we'll just kind of, hey, y'all enjoy the bus. But we had a great time. We met all their friends. And then they would come over to the porch again. They'd come over to the porch again. They'd come over to the porch again. We're just having a great time getting to know them. We'd get to know their friends. Like our small group one time, I'm talking about raising the bar for small groups. Like our small group one time did a surprise birthday party for Caroline's 30th birthday in Chicago. Everybody shows up. Absolutely insane. They come too. I was like, well, you're not really part of our small group or the church, but you know and love all of my friends now because we've been hanging out and you've been asking questions. Why don't you just come to Chicago too? It's going to be a great time. And they come to Chicago with us. And then little by little, they start asking these questions. She would start asking Caroline questions about her faith. I was a pastor at a church in Nashville. Then they'd be like, well, you know, maybe we want to, they had their first kid. And they're like, well, maybe it's time for a change in our family. Maybe we want to raise our kids a little bit differently. And so where's this church that you teach at? And there they were, man. You'd see them sitting back there at church on Sunday. And little by little, we'd start to see communion start to point towards this affection for Jesus. What a beautiful picture. One of my favorite pictures was, I mean, it goes back a hot minute, but this was back when I was going to Romania in the summers to just to serve overseas and working with teenagers and doing some, that's a whole nother that's an hour. But there was at one point I was getting ready to go for 6 months and I was home and a bunch of friends were kind of throwing a going away party, just sort of, we were together fellowshipping, communing over a whole lot of food. It was fantastic. But meanwhile, in my life, there was this guy. I was doing construction. I was building houses in Oregon, and this guy was the project manager of the company, and I was sort of his assistant. He was teaching me a lot of things. But so we'd basically drive around together in the truck all the time, and we liked the same music. He'd be like, "What do you like?" I'd be like, at the time, I was like, "I love metal." I don't so much anymore. Like David Crowder, Chris Tomlin kind of changed that a little bit for me. But on a bad day and a half decent day, you might catch me in the garage listening to some metal. It's the thing. And he's like, "What do you like?" And I was like, and I'd start naming some of these Christian bands, and I'd be like, "What do you like?" And he'd start naming some very far from God bands, right? And then I'd be like, "Well, man, let's play this." So he started to like that, and he'd be like, "Man, what's he talking about in there?" I'm like, "Whoever listened to metal and cared what they were saying." She starts asking these questions, just little things start to happen. And then we built a house that we couldn't sell because it was winter and the driveway was too steep. Nobody wanted it. So we're like, well, we got to wait till it thaws. And so, hey, somebody should probably stay there. So me and 2 other buddies and Mike all moved into that house together. I said, "Mike, man, which room? Mike, you take the master, man. And he's just like, "What?" So now there's me and my 2 other buddies who are just sort of zealous in our faith and our relationship with Jesus in that season in our life, but not goofy. I don't know if there's an awkward pause long enough to emphasize what I just said, right? But just not goofy about it. Like you want to just see my lid come off real quick. Mike moved in. And we just spent a lot of time with Mike. He asked us a lot of questions about our faith. He began going to our church with us. We would host the small group. He was there. He was fully engaged. Fast forward, we're at the going away party. And Mike runs up to me and he just gives me a big hug. And I was like, "Yo, you're not a hugger. What's going on?" I just want you to know I gave my life to Jesus. I just want you to know I gave my life to Jesus. I'm going to live for Him. I just want to thank you and the guys for letting me be a regular part of your life. Y'all, it took a year and a half. A year and a half of communion. Just communion. Who are 3 to 300 people in your life that you can now go, my intentional communion just took on a different meaning. Sharing a meal with somebody just took on a different meaning. Engaging with the gritty folks of life and not running from them or seeing it as an us versus them just took on a whole new meaning in life. That's my hope for us as a church. That when we say your story matters, we would actually mean it, because no matter what the story is, it's not an accident, right? And maybe a great deal of communion might be able to unravel a little bit of what that story looks like. And when you strip a story all the way back, no matter what that story tells, there's an opportunity for redemption, because Jesus is the hero of the story. Amen? Let's pray together.